Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Dr. Flint had a big house in the town. He also had many farms. He owned about 50 slaves. A slave is a person who is forced to work for no pay. Dr. Flint also hired other slaves to work for him every year. In the South, there was a special day called Hiring Day. This day happened on the 1st of January. On the next day, January 2nd, the slaves had to leave and go to their new masters. These new masters would make the slaves work very hard. On a farm, slaves worked until the corn and cotton plants were ready. After that, they were given 2 days off. Some masters were kind and gave the slaves a nice meal under the trees during these 2 days. But once the break was over, the slaves had to work again. They worked until Christmas Eve. If the slaves worked hard all year and didn't get into trouble, they were sometimes given more days off for Christmas. Some masters gave 4 days, while others gave 5 days. This depended on what the master or the overseer decided. Then came New Year's Eve, the night before January 1st. On this night, the slaves packed their few things. They did not have much. Some only had a few old clothes or little items. They waited nervously for the next day. They did not know what would happen to them. Early in the morning, many men, women, and children came together in one place. They stood and waited. It was like they were criminals waiting to hear their punishment. On that day, the slaves could see who was kind and who was not. They knew which masters treated their slaves well and which ones were very cruel. The good masters were surrounded by slaves saying, "Please, master, choose me. I will work very hard for you this year." But not every slave wanted to go with a new master. If a slave refused, the master or overseer would beat him. Sometimes they would even put the slave in jail until he agreed to work. The slave also had to promise not to run away. If the slave changed his mind later and ran away, the punishment was terrible. If he was caught, the master would whip him so badly that blood would drip down his legs. The slave's legs would be tied with heavy chains, and he would be forced to work in the fields while still in chains. This could go on for many days. If the slave survived all this, he might have to go back to the same master the next year. Sometimes, the master did not even let the slave go to the hiring ground to find someone else. After all the slaves for hire were chosen, it was time to sell the other slaves. Oh, you happy free women! Think about how different your New Year's Day is from the day of a poor slave woman. For you, New Year's Day is a happy time. The day feels bright and full of blessings. Everywhere you go, people smile and say kind things to you. They say, "Happy New Year." You get lovely gifts from your friends and family. Even people who were not kind to you before are kind now. They say good wishes to you during this special time. Your children come to you with little gifts. They look up at you with their happy faces and rosy cheeks. They smile and wait for your hugs and kisses. These children are yours. No one can take them away from you, except for death itself. But for a slave mother, New Year's Day is a day full of pain and sadness. She sits on the cold floor of her small cabin. Her cabin is not warm or cozy like your home. She looks at her children and feels afraid. She knows that tomorrow, someone might take her children away. She cannot stop it. She often wishes she and her children could die during the night, so they would not have to face the pain of being separated. The slave mother may not know how to read or write. She may not have had a chance to learn. The system of slavery has treated her badly since she was a child. It has made her life hard and sad. But she is still a mother. She still loves her children with all her heart. She feels the same pain that any mother would feel if her children were taken away. One day I saw something very sad. A slave mother had 7 children. On a sale day, she had to bring all her children to the auction block. This is a place where slaves were sold like things in a market. She knew that some of her children would be taken from her. But something worse happened. They took all her children. The children were sold to a slave trader. A slave trader is someone who buys slaves to sell them again for money. The mother was sold to a man in her own town. By the end of the day, all her children were far away. She begged the trader to tell her where he was taking her children. She said, "Please, tell me where they are going." But the trader did not tell her. He would sell the children one by one in different places to get the most money. Later, I saw that mother in the street. I can still remember her face. Her face looked wild and full of pain. Her eyes looked tired, and her body looked weak. She was crying and wringing her hands. She said, "They're gone. All of them are gone. Why doesn't God just let me die?" I did not know what to say to her. Her pain was too big for words. I could not comfort her. This kind of thing does not happen once or twice. It happens every day. In fact, it happens every hour. Slave owners had a cruel way of dealing with old slaves. When a slave became old and weak, the owners did not care for them. These slaves had worked hard for many years, giving their strength and health to serve their masters. But when they were no longer useful, the masters found ways to get rid of them. I knew an old woman who had worked for her master for 70 years. That is a very long time. She was faithful and worked hard all her life. She had done everything her master wanted. But after so many years of hard work, her body was tired and sick. She could not work much anymore. Her hands and legs were weak. She was no longer strong enough to do the work she used to do. Her owners decided to move to Alabama. But they did not take the old woman with them. They left her behind. She had no family to care for her. The master wanted to sell her to someone else. He did not care who bought her, as long as he got some money. The price for this old woman was only $20. $20. That is all her life of hard work was worth to her master. She had given everything to serve him, but now she was treated like an old thing that no one wanted.